Welcome back to another Genshin Interact video. Let us know down in the comments if this guide was helpful or if you have any other tips about Kazuha. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Thank you for watching, guys. Now on to the video.
Descendant of the famous Kaedahara clan, Kazuha is one of the best supports and characters in the game. Working well to buff his team at every chance he gets, Kazuha also has the ability to do some damage. Now let's take a closer look at how Kazuha's talents work, which ones to level into, and how high you should level into each one. First, you should level into his burst talent. When using his burst, Kazuha deals an AoE anemo damage slash and creates a field called Autumn Whirlwind that periodically deals AoE anemo damage to opponents inside the field. If Autumn Whirlwind comes into contact with Hydro, Pyro, Cryo, or Electro, the AoE Anemo field absorbs that element and additionally periodically does increased AoE damage of that elemental type. This talent should be top priority to level even though it is mainly supportive, and you should be looking to get this talent to level 8 and possibly even crowning it. When increasing the level of this talent, not only does the slashing damage inside the field increase, but also the additional elemental damage that comes from absorbing an element that can be swirled. The next two talents are totally up to you to level into or not, but I will be going over them and telling you what I think the talent should be leveled at. Next, we're going to be talking about the skill. The skill pulls objects towards Kazuha and suspends himself and small opponents up in the air, dealing AoE anemo damage. When suspending himself in the air, Kazuha has 10 seconds where he can perform a plunging attack known as Madare Ranzan. When performing Madare Ranzan, Kazuha leaves behind a small wind tunnel, pulling enemies and objects into it. Madare Ranzan is considered plunging attack damage. The press version of this skill is usually used for non-combat help. You can use this skill even if you are not on the ground to get an extra jump in the air. Most of the time in combat, you will want to use the hold version of this skill to get a larger AoE of pulling more enemies closer to you. And the hold version also does more damage than the press. My opinion would be to level this talent to level 8 if you have the materials to do so, and there are a couple reasons as to why. The first being that you are going to be using this skill to take advantage of its great pulling ability in combat, so the extra damage doesn't really hurt. The other reason is that you will already be using this skill most likely to get a lot of energy for your Kazuha or for your other party members, so you might as well level the talent for extra damage while you use the skill for the energy. Quick disclaimer, remember that leveling talents does not increase the ability to get more energy particles though. The last talent is Kazuha's normal attack. This all depends on how you wish to use Kazuha, only for his buffs or for some extra damage as a damage support or DPS. If Kazuha is on your account purely to support and take advantage of his kit to help teammates, then do not level into this normal attack talent at all, since Kazuha will not be using his normal attacks when he is out on the field. If you are still looking for Kazuha's skill to do more damage with the plunging attack from his skill, you should level into his normal attack talent to around 6 or so, maybe even 8 as a support, and going 8 and beyond as an on-field DPS. Support Kazuha is usually used to get his skill and burst out, then switch to the remaining supports or straight to the DPS. Once again, support Kazuha likes this talent around level 6, maybe even 8, but if you have the materials to do so. But remember that it is not necessary. If Kazuha is built on the team to stay out on the field as long as possible due to either some sort of infusion from his Constellations or from other characters, then his normal attacks just might be worth to get to level 8 and possibly even higher. But our recommended way of building Kazuha is supportive with some extra damage help off field. So our recommended talent levels are burst at level 8, skill at level 8, and normal attacks either level 1 or level 6.
Looking beyond talents, we now move over to Kazuha's passive talents. Kazuha's first passive talent states that when his skill comes into contact with Hydro, Pyro, Cryo, or Electro, he absorbs that element. Madare Ranzan, the plunging attack, will then deal an additional 200% attack of the absorbed element type as damage. This extra attack boost is not an extra attack, but is still considered a part of Madare Ranzan, which is considered plunging attack damage. His skill can only grab one element at a time, so do be careful when you're near multiple elements to absorb the right one. Kazuha's second passive talent states that when creating a swirl reaction with a swirlable element, every point of elemental mastery Kazuha has will grant all party members a 0.04% elemental damage bonus of the element he swirled. Swirlable elements include Hydro, Pyro, Cryo, and Electro. This extra damage bonus is given for 8 seconds after the swirl reaction is made. If you swirl multiple elements, possible through his burst, he can actually give multiple bonuses at once. After passives, we need to talk about artifact sets for Kazuha. Well, in this case for Kazuha, only really one artifact set. Kazuha should really only be built on a 4-piece Viridescent Venerer set. Even if you are looking to make Kazuha more damage focused, this set also is the best for him. This set can be grinded early game since it is in Mondstadt and can also be strong boxed. The reason this set is so good for Anemo supports is not because of the 2-piece bonus that gives 15% Anemo damage bonus, but actually the 4-piece. The 4-piece bonus increases swirl damage by 60% and decreases elemental resistance of opponents by 40% to the element infused in a swirl reaction. If you do not have a good 4-piece Viridescent set for him, either go for Elemental Mastery main stats with no set bonuses, or if you're lucky early game, get good Elemental Mastery main stat pieces on 2-piece Elemental Mastery sets like Wanderer's Troop, Gilded Dreams, Flower of Paradise Lost, or even Instructor. You can even run a 4-piece Instructor artifact set. The 2-piece on this set gives 80 Elemental Mastery, and the 4-piece set bonus gives all party members 120 Elemental Mastery for 8 seconds when triggering any elemental reaction. Going into artifact main stats and substats, these will change depending on how Kazuha is used on your account. First, let's look at Kazuha as a support, which will focus on giving Kazuha as much Elemental Mastery as possible to fully take advantage of his second passive talent. Our recommendation is an Elemental Mastery Sands, Goblet, and Circlet. If you're not getting your burst as quickly as possible, you can run an Energy Recharge Sands. The substats you should go after are Elemental Mastery, Energy Recharge, then attack percent, crit rate, or crit damage if you can. On the pieces that have Elemental Mastery as the main stat, go after Energy Recharge as the top substat since you cannot have an Elemental Mastery substat on an Elemental Mastery main stat piece. The other way is running Kazuha as a DPS. Your main stats should be an Elemental Mastery Standstill, but an Anemo damage bonus Goblet and a crit rate or crit damage Circlet depending on what you would need there. The substats you should focus getting are Elemental Mastery, crit rate, crit damage, and attack percent. Kazuha is a great character either way you decide to build him and can fit on so many different teams as a great flex and can be a great DPS.
Although artifact sets and artifact stats are very important, the next major part of a character's build is their weapon. The weapon does depend on if you are building Kazuha for support or damage. First, we'll discuss what weapons will help his supportive capabilities. Starting with his 5-star signature weapon, Freedom Sworn, this weapon gives 198 Elemental Mastery at level 90. This weapon is great because it gives a damage bonus to Kazuha and can give all his party members a normal, charge, and plunging attack damage increase with a bonus also to their attack. This weapon is not necessary but can be a great help if you go after it, especially with how good the weapon banner will be with Alhaitham's weapon as well. Next are some 4-stars that have Elemental Mastery main stats, all with the same amounts. First is Zyphos' Moonlight with 165 Elemental Mastery. This weapon will give Kazuha a buff of Energy Recharge to get his burst quickly, and it also gives his party members part of this buff as well. This weapon is usually put on Kazuha when running Kazuha with Raiden, since Raiden can turn Energy Recharge into damage. Other 4-stars are Iron Sting and Tokubo Shigure, and they also have 165 Elemental Mastery at level 90. These weapons specifically will help a little bit more with Kazuha's personal damage. If you need more Energy Recharge, weapons like Skyward Blade, Favonius Sword, and Sacrificial Sword can be used. We recommend trying to use an Elemental Mastery Sword to make the most out of that second passive. Now we look at some damage swords to use on Kazuha. Light of Foliar Incision is probably the best for his damage since it has a high crit damage main stat as well as its ability to give more damage based on Elemental Mastery. Second to this weapon is probably Mistblade or Reforged, since its bonus gives elemental damage bonus as well as more damage based on having more elements in your party, which will be easier since Kazuha is usually your Anemo with 2 other elements to create a good reaction for damage. Besides these 5-stars, the 4-stars are limited with the Black Sword and the attack percent swords, but these really do not help Kazuha out too much.
After weapons, we now take a look at Kazuha's Constellations. His first constellation gives his skill back quicker by decreasing its cooldown by 10%. This constellation also resets the cooldown of the skill when Kazuha uses his burst. This means you can use your skill, then your burst, and immediately you will be able to have your skill to use again. Kazuha's second constellation gives 2 effects when Kazuha unleashes his burst. The first is increasing Kazuha's Elemental Mastery by 200. The other effect increases the Elemental Mastery of characters inside his burst field by 200 as well. This does not mean that if Kazuha is inside his burst, he will gain a total of 400 Elemental Mastery. Kazuha will get 200 Elemental Mastery inside or outside his burst field. His third and fifth constellations increase skill, then burst talents by 3 respectively. The fourth constellation also gives 2 effects which trigger when Kazuha's energy is lower than 45. The first effect states that the press skill gives Kazuha 3 energy and the hold skill gives 4 energy. The second effect gives 2 energy every second Kazuha is gliding. His 6th constellation gives an Anemo infusion for 5 seconds when Kazuha uses his skill or burst. On top of this infusion, each point of elemental mastery Kazuha possesses will increase the damage dealt by Kazuha's normal, charged, and plunging attacks by 0.2%. The infusion, plus the buff to all areas of the normal attack talent, help Kazuha ease into the role of a DPS and can be really fun to play with and experiment with. Kazuha has some good constellations, while some others are lacking. That being said, his first and second constellations are something to think about getting. His first constellation helps you out by giving Kazuha his skill more often, which means you won't have to focus on his energy recharge as much in his artifacts and weapons. His second constellation is good, but only for certain teams really. The buff to himself is amazing any way you look at it, but the buff to others can be unnecessary in teams that are not focused heavily on their reaction damage like Super Conduct and Freeze teams. Because of this, we believe his first constellation is his best constellation, besides the 6th constellation of course. Although these constellations can make Kazuha easier to play, he is still one of the best players in the game and is still one of the best at Constellation 0.
Following Constellations, we need to look at teams for Kazuha. We know that his entire kit focuses on buffing his teammates. This buffing and even his own damage is based off of swirling, so we need to pair him with elements that can be swirled. Arguably the best team before Hyper Bloom, and the team I will be using in the showcase, is Raiden Shogun, Yae Miko, Kazuha, and Bennett. Although there was only one resonance, these types of teams are normal for Kazuha since he is the flex character when he is usually built for support. Raiden is our main damage dealer. Yae Miko is a great pair for her since both characters take a short amount of time on field to get their damage out on the field. Kazuha takes advantage of helping 2 electro damage dealers with his buffs. Focus on getting electro skills out and swirling all of that with Kazuha to get these buffs from his kit. Last but not least is Bennett, who is a great healer as well as attack buffer. His pyro on the field can even make for some nice overload explosions here and there to keep the enemies stunned for you. Now looking at some characters to run in place of these other characters. In place of the Raiden and Yae Miko pair are Ketching, Lisa, Fischl, and Beto. Keeping Kazuha obviously, and if you somehow do not have Bennett, first of all, get him from the shop whenever possible because he's totally worth it. Second of all, you could use either another healer or a shielder like Zhongli, Baizhu, Kukomi, Barbara, Diona, Yao Yao, and even another electro character with Kuki. That was Kazuha in more of a support role, but there is a part of the Genshin community that likes Kazuha as their DPS and on-fielder. Usually Kazuha is at the 6th constellation when people are usually putting him at that DPS role, or if they kind of have an infusion from Candace or Bennett's 6th constellation or another character. Vaporize being one of the easiest and high damaging reactions, we can use this as a base with Kazuha as the DPS, with Mona and Yelan as our Hydro supports, and finally Bennett as the healer and buffer to Kazuha. You could also run Kazuha, Mona, Chongyun, and Shenhe for a nice freeze team. You could give Kazuha Constellation 6 Bennett with Layla and Rosaria for a nice melt team. You could give Kazuha a lot of different infusions or run him with Farazan and his own Constellation 6 infusion for more straight Anemo damage. There are a lot of ways to build Kazuha when he is at his 6th constellation. So play around with it and let us know what crazy combination you found and loved. Now to the gameplay. As stated before, I will be using Raiden Shogun, Yae Miko, Kazuha as a support, and Bennett. I have a C0 Raiden, which is running an R5 the catch at level 90, 1458 attack, and a crit of 48 over 168. Yae Miko is at Constellation 0 and is sitting at just south of 2000 attack, running an R1 Solar Pearl at level 90 as well, and has a crit of 75 over 178. My Kazuha is at Constellation 1 and has an R2 Iron Sting at level 90 and sits at 880 Elemental Mastery. Finally on this team is Bennett at Constellation 6 with a base attack of 702. I will also be showcasing the damage with a different support other than Kazuha to show the impact he really has on the team. I will be using a Constellation 6 Xiangling because she doesn't really buff the team very much, so it is very close to having no character in that slot. Since we are looking at the buffing difference between Kazuha and Xiangling or another character to see how much Kazuha really helps, the buffs she brings are increasing pyro damage bonus of teammates, decreasing pyro resistance of enemies, and buffing attack with the chili pepper her skill leaves behind, and the pyro resonance as well. The chili pepper gives 10% attack bonus if I pick it up, and the pyro resonance increases all party members' attack by 25%. The major differences we will see here is how much damage Raiden and Yae Miko are putting out with and without Kazuha. Finally, I will be doing a Virgin team with a DPS Kazuha. Kazuha is built the exact same way as he was in the other teams with a high elemental mastery. I will be using a Yelan at Constellation 0 with a high energy recharge for Hydro application with her burst. Alongside Yelan will be Baizhu. Baiju's job here is to keep my characters alive and create bloom cores with Yelan for Kazuha to burgeon. How are we getting an Animo character though to do Pyro normal hits? I'll be giving a Pyro infusion with Bennett's 6th Constellation, and Bennett is built the exact same way he was built in the other teams. Now I will finally shut up so you can enjoy the gameplay. We hope the gameplay cleared some things up, or if it helped to see Kazuha in action and really see how he helps the team. If you have any extra tips or tricks you know or use with your own Kazuha, please go ahead and let us know down in the comments, as well as any extra questions you may still have for us about him. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.